When a woman doesn't chase, something very specific happens in a man's mind. Emotional contrast is created. And contrast is one of the most powerful psychological forces we experience. Human beings don't value things in isolation, we value them in comparison. Presence only feels meaningful when we understand absence. Certainty only feels comforting after uncertainty. And connection only feels deep when it's no longer guaranteed. When a woman pulls back from chasing, she doesn't disappear dramatically or play games. She simply stops over-investing. She stops filling every silence, stops explaining herself excessively, stops trying to secure reassurance, and in doing so, she creates space. That space becomes loud. Suddenly, the man feels something he didn't feel before, the absence of easy access, and that absence triggers reflection. Psychologically, men are especially sensitive to emotional contrast because attention is often mistaken for permanence. When someone is always available, the mind relaxes into assumption. She's here, she'll stay. I don't need to think about this right now. But when that availability changes, not as punishment, not as manipulation, but as a natural consequence of self-respect, the mind wakes up. It starts asking questions. Why does this feel different? Why am I thinking about her now? What did I take for granted? This is where missing begins, not because the woman chased and then stopped, but because the man is now aware of the emotional gap between before and now. He feels the loss of a familiar emotional presence, and the brain is wired to resolve loss. We are drawn toward what feels unfinished, unresolved, or suddenly uncertain. Philosophically, this speaks to a deeper truth about desire. Desire doesn't grow through consumption, it grows through contrast. When everything is available all the time, desire dulls. When access becomes earned rather than assumed, desire sharpens. A woman who doesn't chase isn't withholding love. She's allowing reality to speak, and reality says, what you don't actively value, you risk losing. Importantly, this isn't about disappearing to provoke anxiety. That kind of absence is shallow and temporary. What creates lasting impact is emotional consistency paired with self-respect. She's still warm, still kind, still herself, but she's no longer orienting her entire emotional world around his reactions. And that shift is profound. Men miss women like this because the absence isn't just physical, it's emotional. They miss how she made them feel without trying to control how they felt. They miss the ease, the presence, the authenticity that wasn't performative. And now, in the quiet space where her attention used to be, they are left with their own thoughts. And those thoughts often circle back to her. This is why chasing backfires. Chasing collapses contrast. It removes space. It replaces mystery with effort and longing with reassurance. But restraint, healthy, grounded restraint, allows the emotional weight of connection to be felt when a woman doesn't chase. What she is really communicating, often without realizing it, is a deep sense of self-worth. And this is where psychology becomes unavoidable. Human beings are instinctively drawn to what appears to have value, and value is rarely announced, it's inferred. A woman who doesn't chase is not saying, I don't care. She's saying, I know my worth doesn't depend on convincing you. And that message lands powerfully in a man's subconscious. From a psychological standpoint, chasing is often interpreted not as desire, but as urgency. And urgency subtly suggests scarcity, not of opportunity, but of self-belief. When someone is chasing, the underlying message can become, I need this to work in order to feel okay. On the other hand, when a woman remains grounded, responsive but not overinvested, present but not clinging, she communicates abundance. She appears emotionally whole. And wholeness is deeply attractive. Men in particular are sensitive to this distinction, not because they are calculating or cruel, but because attraction is tied to polarity. Desire grows when two people meet as equals, not when one person is trying to pull the other toward them. A woman who doesn't chase places herself on equal footing. She doesn't rush to prove, explain, or secure. She allows connection to unfold naturally. And that natural unfolding signals confidence, emotional stability, and self-trust. Philosophically, this taps into a deeper truth. We are drawn to those who seem chosen by themselves. Self-worth that is internally sourced is magnetic because it doesn't ask for validation, it invites curiosity. A man may not consciously think she has high self-worth, but he feels it. He senses that she would be okay with or without him, and paradoxically, that's what makes him want to step closer. This is also why men often miss women who didn't chase them long after the connection ends. The memory that lingers isn't just about attraction, it's about how she made him feel about himself. He felt chosen, not needed, wanted, not relied upon. And that distinction matters. Being needed can feel heavy, being chosen feels empowering. It's important to clarify something here. Not chasing is not about emotional distance or coldness. It's about emotional sovereignty. She still expresses interest. She still engages, but she doesn't abandon herself in the process. She doesn't overextend to secure affection. She trusts that if something is right, it won't require her to shrink her standards or chase someone who is uncertain. And this is where the shift happens. When a man senses that a woman values herself, he instinctively rises to meet that level, or he drifts away. Either outcome is clarity, but when he does rise, it's because he recognizes that her attention is something to be earned, not assumed, and earning builds respect. Respect fuels desire. Desire sustains connection. When a woman doesn't chase, she creates the conditions for something many people misunderstand about men. Men don't emotionally attach through being pursued. They attach through effort. This is one of the most counterintuitive truths in dating psychology, and yet it explains why so many men miss women who didn't chase them long after the connection ended. Effort is not just about action, it's about identity. When a man invests time, energy, thought, and intention into someone, his brain begins to justify that investment. Psychologically, this is known as effort justification. We value what we work for because our mind wants our actions to feel meaningful, if he had to. Step forward, initiate, plan, and emotionally engage. Then the connection becomes part of his internal narrative. He didn't just like her, he chose her. And choice creates attachment. When a woman chases, that process is disrupted. If she initiates everything, fills emotional gaps, and keeps the connection alive single-handedly, the man never has to step into effort. And without effort, there's no anchoring. He may enjoy the attention, but enjoyment is not attachment. Comfort is not commitment. Attraction without effort often fades because nothing ties the feeling to action. Philosophically, this speaks to how meaning is created. We don't find meaning in what is given freely without participation. We find meaning in what we contribute to. Effort transforms desire into ownership, not ownership of the person, but ownership of the experience. When a man invests, he feels part of something being built rather than something being handed to him. This is why men often don't miss the women who chase them relentlessly. Even if those women were kind, loving, and available, there was no emotional muscle built, no sense of, I showed up for this. But the woman who didn't chase, the one who allowed him to step forward at his pace, becomes unforgettable, not because she withheld, but because she allowed him to engage. And this isn't about manipulation or playing hard to get. It's about letting the natural masculine impulse to pursue, protect, and participate emerge without interference. When a woman resists the urge to overfunction emotionally, she gives him room to act. And action is how men discover their feelings. Many men don't know how they feel until they've done something about it. There's also a deeper respect embedded here. When a man has to invest, he doesn't just value the woman, he values himself in relation to her. He sees himself as capable, intentional, and chosen. That sense of self strengthens the bond. He's not just attached to her, he's attached to the version of himself that showed up for her. This is why men often miss women who didn't chase even when the connection didn't fully develop. The effort they made still lives inside them. The unanswered question, what could this have become, lingers far longer than the certainty of something that required no investment. Another reason men miss women who don't chase them is because those women create emotional contrast, and contrast is what makes desire memorable. Human beings don't remember what feels constant, we remember what creates difference. When everything is always available, always explained, always reassured, the emotional landscape becomes flat. But when a woman allows space, uncertainty, and natural rhythm, she creates peaks and valleys, and psychologically those peaks are where attachment forms. When a woman doesn't chase, she isn't disappearing or playing games. She's simply allowing moments where the man has to feel her absence. And absence, when paired with genuine connection, is not neglect, it's activation. It gives the mind room to wander, to wonder, to replay conversations, to ask questions like, what is she doing right now? Or why did that moment with her feel different? Desire needs space to echo. Without space, nothing resonates. From a psychological perspective, this taps into how memory and emotion work together. The brain prioritizes what is incomplete. This is known as the Zeigarnik effect. We remember unfinished emotional loops more vividly than completed ones. When a woman doesn't chase, she leaves emotional sentences unfinished. Not because she withholds affection, but because she doesn't over-explain, over-pursue, or over-secure the bond prematurely. That incompleteness keeps her alive in his mind long after the interaction ends. Contrast also restores polarity. Attraction thrives on polarity. Movement between closeness and distance, certainty and mystery, connection and independence. When a woman chases, polarity collapses. Everything becomes available at once. There's no tension, no emotional charge, no sense of discovery. But when she maintains her own center, her life, her pace, her emotional boundaries, she remains differentiated. And differentiation is deeply attractive because it signals strength, self-trust, and emotional maturity. Philosophically, this speaks to a deeper truth about desire. We don't desire what merges with us too quickly. We desire what remains whole while inviting connection. A woman who doesn't chase doesn't dissolve herself into the relationship. She stays intact, and that integrity creates respect. Men don't just miss the connection, they miss how they felt in the presence of someone who didn't need them to complete her, yet allowed them to participate. This is also why men often realize their feelings too late. While the relationship or interaction was happening, there was no emotional pressure, no urgency forced by pursuit. Only later, when the contrast becomes clear, when her energy is no longer readily accessible, does the emotional weight land. The quiet becomes loud, the space becomes noticeable, and that's when missing begins. Importantly, this doesn't mean indifference, it means emotional economy. Saying what matters, showing up when it counts, and then allowing space for the other person to metabolize the experience. Many women unintentionally remove this process by chasing clarity, reassurance, or validation too quickly. But clarity rushed is connection robbed of depth. Space is not the enemy of intimacy, it's the condition that allows it to grow roots. Men miss women who don't chase because those women let feelings develop organically without force. They allowed desire to breathe. They trusted that what was real didn't need constant reinforcement to survive. Another reason men miss women who don't chase them is that those women don't collapse their self-worth into the outcome of being chosen. And this may be one of the most quietly powerful dynamics of all. When a woman doesn't chase, she communicates without ever saying it. that her value is not up for negotiation. Psychologically, this changes everything about how she is perceived and remembered. When someone chases, especially repeatedly, the subtext is often, "My sense of security depends on your response." Even if that's not consciously intended, emotionally it can register as pressure. And pressure rarely creates desire, it creates obligation or avoidance. A woman who doesn't chase removes that pressure entirely. She isn't asking a man to validate her worth through pursuit, she already assumes her worth, and that assumption is magnetic. From a psychological standpoint, humans are drawn to people who appear internally anchored. We trust them more, we respect them more, and crucially, we fear losing them more. When a woman doesn't chase, she signals that her life is full, her identity is stable, and her happiness is not fragile. That doesn't make her cold, it makes her grounded, and grounded people feel rare in a world where so many are grasping for reassurance. This is where men often experience a delayed emotional response. At first, the absence of chasing can feel easy, even comfortable. There's no demand to step up immediately, no urgency forcing a decision. But over time, something subtle happens. The man realizes she isn't orienting her life around him. And that realization triggers reflection. He starts asking, if she's not chasing me, what does she know that I don't? That question alone elevates her value in his mind. Philosophically, this taps into the idea that desire flows toward what is self-sustaining. We are drawn to people who seem complete, not because we don't want connection, but because we want to add to something whole rather than rescue something unstable. A woman who doesn't chase is not withholding love. She's demonstrating that love is a choice, not a need. And choice carries far more weight than dependency. There's also an important emotional boundary here. Not chasing means she doesn't overinvest prematurely. She allows time to reveal consistency, intention, and effort. That pacing creates trust, not just for her, but for him. He knows that if she stays, it's because she genuinely wants to, not because she's afraid to leave, and that knowledge makes her presence meaningful. It turns connection into something earned, not assumed. Men miss women like this because being with them feels different. There's no emotional chaos, no roller coaster of reassurance and doubt. Instead, there's clarity, steadiness, and a quiet confidence that lingers. When such a woman is no longer present, what's missed isn't just her attention, it's how she made the man feel about himself in her presence. Calm, chosen, respected, free. And here's the irony. Many women chase to avoid being forgotten, but chasing often erases the very qualities that make someone unforgettable. What stays with us is not who tried hardest to keep us, but who stood firmly in themselves and invited us to rise to meet them. The final reason men miss women who don't chase them is that these women understand the power of letting go, and more importantly, they are willing to walk away from what doesn't meet them. This is where everything we've talked about so far comes together. Not chasing isn't passive. It's an active choice rooted in self-respect, emotional maturity, and a deep trust in abundance rather than scarcity. When a woman doesn't chase, she implicital. Why communicates that she is not afraid of loss. And psychologically, that is profoundly disarming. Most people are driven by a fear of losing connection, attention, or love. So when someone shows they can release instead of cling, it creates a paradox. Their willingness to let go makes them more valuable, not less. Men feel this instinctively. They may not articulate it, but they sense that this woman is not staying out of fear. She's staying only if it feels right. From a psychological lens, this taps into autonomy and agency. Desire thrives where there is freedom. When a man knows a woman is choosing him freely and could just as easily choose not to, his engagement becomes more conscious. He can't rely on inertia or her emotional investment to keep things going. He has to show up intentionally, and that intentionality is what creates emotional imprinting. It's why, long after a connection ends, she stays in his mind. There's also a philosophical depth here that's easy to miss. Letting go is an act of faith, not in another person, but in oneself. A woman who doesn't chase believes at a core level that love is not something she has to secure through effort. She believes it is something that meets her when alignment exists. This belief system shapes her behavior. She doesn't negotiate her standards. She doesn't over-explain her needs. She doesn't audition for a role in someone's life. She simply participates fully and withdraws gracefully when reciprocity fades. This is what makes her unforgettable. Not drama, not intensity, but clarity. When she leaves, there's no confusion about why. The man is left with his own reflection. He knows she didn't ask for more than he was willing to give, but she also refused to accept less than she deserved. That kind of mirror lingers. It forces growth or regret, often both. Men miss women like this because being with them felt honest. There were no games, no manipulation, no emotional bargaining, just presence, warmth, and boundaries. And when that presence is gone, what's felt is the absence of emotional integrity. He doesn't just miss her laughter or her affection. He misses how clean and grounded the connection felt, how real it was. And this is the ultimate shift. Not chasing isn't about trying to be missed. It's about choosing yourself so fully that being missed becomes a natural consequence. When you stop trying to secure love, you create the conditions for real love to emerge or for the wrong connection to fall away.